Introducing Knuckle Tracking Bin with Mike Myers and presented by MCG LLC.
Welcome to another episode of Knuckle Dragging BIM with Mike Myers. You join me in my backyard again, sitting here on my porch swing and spending a little bit of time out here just trying to have a change of scenery while I'm still kind of going over some of the things that I handle day to day in my job, right? I spent a lot of time researching families and adjusting to things I've run into during the work week, or I research coding and things that I might be able to do. And so I spend a lot of that time during the summer months out on my porch doing that. In the background, every once in a while, you're going to hear my rooster going off. We sit on some property here, so we've got some roosters ways away from me, but every once in a while, he'll cut in. He'll want to interject and say his two words. He doesn't like me whatsoever. Today's topic, I'd like to delve into families. And because it's something fresh on my mind and something that I'm working with at the moment, we're going to discuss unistrut families. And unistrut families are something relatively universal within trade contractors. It's something that we're going to use, especially MEP, to support our systems. And so being able to have a quality unistrut is going to save you in the long run. You need to take and I flubbed right there pretty good. Some days my lips and my mouth don't work. So bear with me. My video editing skills suck as well. So I'm going to just kind of keep a lot of this stuff in there. So you're just going to have to laugh at me because that's really what this is. In the unistrut family, right, you've got to have the ability to move it within different planes as well as rotate it up, down, left, right. And typically, you'll have individuals that'll make multiple families to handle those different iterations. And so by the time you get done placing, say, a frame or a trapeze hanger, you have multiple types of unistrut or families that you've had to place, as well as multiple types of that family. And that becomes cumbersome on the data side of the project. It gets large. And so when you start working in larger projects, family size becomes a major issue. Now, another side effect of families is they are the building block of what we do. So the information in them needs to be smart enough that we can get it out to whomever our customer is. May that be the manufacturing facility, or the field if they're installing off of what we're producing. We need to be able to generate a BOM, a bill of materials that gives the nuts and the nitty gritty about that information. You know, what its length is, what it is, height, length, width, in a typical format that's easy to get to. Now, the easiest way of doing that is within the host-nested relationship. Now, that adds its own complexity to a family and makes it harder to work with for your average everyday user. But within that, you have the ability to drive your data set and what people are reporting out. You get truer information with a lighter weight family. All right, so going into the Revit side of this, the first building block of a piece of unistrut is the profile of it itself. It has a unique U shape that you need to know which direction it is facing. If you're dealing with manufacturing especially, you need to be able to send out what size it is and what direction it is, right? To the field, you can cheat, you can put text notes on it and stuff like that, but we want to get away from text notes. We want to make this stuff easier to work with. So placing the element takes a smidge more time, but data output is better. You have a easier process of the detailing aspect where you can gain the same quality information without having to fudge it with text notes and stuff that doesn't match, because every user is going to enter data in differently. Unistrut could be 10 different ways of being unistrut, as well as strut, lowercase, uppercase, messed up spelling or not, right? So getting clean data is important, and that starts at the profile. It starts at the nested. Before you can get into the nested Unistra, you have to start at the profile because that's the basic block of it. Now, there's some nuances to profiles that make them frustrating, and until recently, had no idea about, so I've avoided them. But with proper use of it and the ability to flex that profile, now you can make your families more lightweight because they're line dependent with a start point, end point, and you can move it however on that line or set of lines. So let's jump into Revit now. All right, so in here I have got a blank profile family that I've already opened up, and inside of this, we're going to skim through the basics because I assume most people jumping into this video, if you're actually watching through all my awkwardness, you're not a basic user, you know some of this stuff, so if I'm going too fast, I apologize, and if you want to follow up with a question afterwards, let me know. Otherwise, there's a ton of good resources on the basics, and I don't want to delve into those because, you know, they're well covered. Anyway, creating my basic profile reference planes here. Skimming over this stuff because, again, this shouldn't be where we're looking for value today. If you're looking for more basics, there are a bunch of great videos out there. If you have any questions on it, I can refer you back to it after the fact. Change this value. Okay, in a profile, one of the important things is that they must be a type parameter. Regardless of if you change it to instance, you're not going to see it in the family that you nested into. So always leave it as a type. There's no reason to change it. It just becomes an encumbrance. Another thing I like to do with my dimensions is I'll come up to edit type here, and then under dimension line snap distance, I will change that to 1/4 inch and just make it easier so I can drag these to a typical distance apart from each other. Just a handy little tip right there. Okay, so now I'm going to just brush through putting in some other ones. We're not going to associate anything to these parameters, and some of the values aren't going to be true. I'm just going to throw them in there just for ease, and I'll probably speed up through this portion so you don't have to watch me do some of the mundane. Right, so that should be the basics of my shape. Now let's draw some lines. And as you're going, if you can be sure of the reference plane that you're associating to, just go ahead and lock it at that time.
I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to this instead of just basic steps.
This is really all that this family is ever going to be. Again, you want to leave those as type parameters. You're going to want to be able to set these to true values yourself, so do some research to what that is as well as that depth. Now, this is only a medium view, meaning that even if I associate yes/no parameters to the visibility controls here and turn them to only medium and then tried to put a fine profile in here, those lines would be overlapping even if you toggle them off. When you load it into the family, it will break things. So you're going to have a fine, coarse, and medium version of this. The coarse you can typically just do in the nested because it's just a square at that point, or a rectangle. You don't have to have a profile for that, but you do the same sweep method with it to make it associated to a line. Now, because we're done with that, I'm just going to load this into close it, load it into family 1. This is my nested family. I'm not going to save any changes here. Now, we need to do a little bit of prep work in here. I'm going to generate my length, add some dimensions, equal constrain them. I've already preset this one up with a template, so it's got some built-in stuff. Now I want to create a reference line. Now that reference line is important. It starts from here. Typically, I'd associate it to a reference plane if I had a moving AFF with it. In this case, I won't because this is just going into a nested, so it doesn't need that complexity. Lock it to this reference plane, but then I also want to hit AL, lock the end of that line to here. So at that point, I'll come up and I'll create a sweep. First thing we want to do, because we've already pre-drawn that line, we want to use that as a path. We'll click that, hit OK. And now because we've already created a profile, we can just choose our family, which is family 3 for this, and then hit apply, and we're done. If we go to a left view now, you'll see we've got this basic extrusion. If we go to a 3D view, you see that profile matches that length that you've given it. Looks good, right? Now, a couple of issues here is we need to be able to go left, down, up, right with this. So we need to build in some movements. One way of doing that is you've got this angle up, and with 2 yes/no controls and a angle control, you can make this move all directions very simply. So what I like to do is, because this is already here and I can associate, this acquires the type immediately if you go this way. I'm just going to create a new parameter. Typically this would be a hidden one for me, but I'll just name it angle control. It needs to be an instance. I like to have controls under constraints, hit OK, hit OK. Now if I come into my family type, create 2 yes/no controls, I'm going to call left, right, toggle. I'm going to copy that value so I can cheat later on. Put that one in construction. We're going to do this one up, down, toggle instance as well. So now we've got these created. This is created and associated to this. Now we need to add some logic. To do that, we're going to do a if statement plus an if statement. The simplest way I know of doing this is because we know if we've got to move 90 degrees to go left or right of its current position and 180s to go up or down. So one of the easiest ways I can think of to putting that together is this if logic. So if So with both checked, we're sitting at 0. If we want to go left and right, it's 90-degree move. We hit apply, field rotate. If we want to go up, down, it's going to add 180 degrees on that, right? So taking it into the left position. If we turn off that left-right toggle, it's going to go into the up-down now. It's a little bit confusing on how you can put this together. This just gives the 4 options based upon checked, unchecked, right? It's just adding values one to the other. You can get a little bit more in-depth in this to make sure that up and down is always up and down and left and right is always left and right, but it just takes a little bit more form to that logic that you're putting into the control here. Overall though, now this is fully functioning and moving very freely on a work plane basis. So without any other toggles, you can change the work plane of this to go from horizontal to vertical. So already very lightweight, very easily moved and manipulated. So now we get to the kind of the data side of it. We need to create a lookup table, and I'm just going to go simple. I'm going to name it lookup table and hit OK, and then you go to manage lookup tables and you can import one. I've already pre-made one, has to do with something else, so we're just going to use that file. The way this is set up is in a lookup table, I have columns. I will always validate against column number 2, ignoring number 1. Number 1 is a blank column. You can use this for your descriptions. You can also do string and other fields with some manipulations. Basically, you define, here's my parameter name. I'm using LP just for lookup description, and then descript, and then let's make that other. The most important part of this is for each of those cells that are going to be part of that, you need to change it from general to text. And this can be anything you want. This just needs to be text. Back more into this if you want to be able to account for back-to-back, but for now I'm just going to leave it at that. And now that should update to match a size that fits within that file because it's looking at depth, inch and 5/8 sat in that file, so here's inch and 5/8 and description based upon that. This is pointless because it is the same value regardless, but just another example of it. So now we're looking at the width, which in there is always inch and 5/8, so this is the value it falls. It's just locking it to that. It doesn't need to be that whatsoever. But if you're needing to adjust things, you can control it through that. So if ever you need to worry about thickness, you can associate it the same way and drive that through a lookup table. So you're getting consistent information within your description, and this is an instance-based description that users can look at that, based upon their selections, can update, right? So you could add another toggle for back-to-back. It wouldn't know if it's back-to-back, and so on and so forth. Again, this is just a basic overview of what a nested family should look like and be able to move and do the things you need to, right? So if I change this to 3/4 with this associated, this should move, but it does not, because inside of a profile, as I was talking earlier, again, if I click on this profile, you'll see that height and depth aren't in there. You think, okay, it's because it's a type parameter. Well, that type isn't editable. So one thing that we have to do to get around that is if you come down to that family symbol instance, you'll see that those parameters are there, but I can't click and edit those whatsoever. So you have to interact with it with the API in essence. And how I've done that is through a Dynamo script. It's really close to the same as if you're associating nested parameters to the host parameter. There's just a minor difference to that script that has to be made in essence to do this. So I'll just go into this real fast. In here, I want to join depth with width, and it's the same name in both files. So I've got the same input tying into input 1 and 2. If I go into this script itself, you'll see that overall it's looking for 2 different lists. Again, I'm feeding this same list into those 2 positions, so it's the same across. If I need a different, I'd split it out. Very simple script overall, only 63 lines, and some of that's junk even, right? So in here, I'll tie that in. I have to predefine what the profile is that I want to use, so I'll choose family 3 because that's what I just loaded in, and then I'll come here and I hit run on that, and I should get no errors. And then you'll see over here, I've actually got association built in here, and when I minimize this, the profile should be 3 1/4, which it is. So now you've not only got 3/4 strut or a size changing profile, you can also rotate that up, down, left, right. This will rotate in 90-degree increments each time in essence, unless you're going back to that. So very lightweight, very easy with a stable central point and lots of movement. This is taking me a long time to be able to in this complexity, but with a little bit of change and a little bit of adjusting, this is a pretty good system. Now, it doesn't work for everything, but hopefully there's some excerpts in here that will help you out in what you're trying to do. So until next time with Knuckle Dragging BIM with Mike Myers, hope to see you again. Thanks.
BIM.